Fluffy was the kind of cat no one expected much from. He wasn't the fastest, nor the strongest, nor the loudest. In fact, he was known for his soft, cloud-like fur and his habit of curling up in the sun for hours at a time. He lived in a quiet neighborhood with his owner, Mrs. Leland, an elderly woman who adored him but often chuckled at his laziness. But Fluffy wasn't just a simple house cat. Beneath his sleepy demeanor, he had a sharp mind and an unusual sense of awareness. He noticed things others didn't. A shadow moving where it shouldn't, a sound in the night that didn't belong, or the faint scent of something out of place. One evening, as Fluffy lounged on the windowsill, his ears twitched at a distant sound. It was faint but persistent, a strange rustling in the alley behind their house. He lifted his head, his whiskers quivering. Something wasn't right. Fluffy leaped from his perch and padded silently toward the back door, slipping through the small cat flap. The alley was dark, but Fluffy's keen eyes adjusted quickly. Near the fence, a group of stray cats were huddled together, whispering in their own feline way. Fluffy, who usually kept to himself, was about to turn back when one of the cats, a lean tabby named Ash, called out, "Fluffy, you need to hear this." Curious, Fluffy stepped closer. Ash's golden eyes darted around before he spoke in a low voice. "There are humans sneaking around the neighborhood at night. They're breaking into houses and stealing things. We think they're planning something bigger." Fluffy blinked. Thieves. In his neighborhood. The idea made his tail twitch. His world had always been predictable, safe. He had never imagined something like this happening so close to home. "We need to stop them," Ash continued, "but we're just strays. No one listens to us." Fluffy thought of Mrs. Leland, of their cozy little home. The idea of strangers creeping around, putting her in danger, sent a surge of determination through him. Maybe he wasn't the biggest or the strongest, but he was smart, and he had an idea. That night, while Mrs. Leland slept, Fluffy stayed awake. He watched from the windows, his ears perked for any sound. And just before midnight he saw them. Two figures moved silently down the street, sticking to the shadows. They stopped at a house, one of them pulling out a tool to tamper with the lock. Fluffy's fur bristled. He had to act fast. Darting through the cat flap, he raced toward Ash and the other strays. "They're here!" he hissed. Ash nodded. "You take the rooftops. We'll cover the streets." Fluffy sprang into action. He climbed onto a low fence, then leaped onto a trash can before clawing his way up to the roof. From above, he had a clear view of the intruders. They had just opened the door to the house. Fluffy let out the loudest yowl he could muster. The sound shattered the silence, echoing down the street. The thieves froze, their heads snapping up. Before they could react, Ash and the other strays joined in, filling the night with eerie wails and cries. Inside the house, a light flicked on. A dog started barking furiously. More lights followed as neighbors woke up, peering out their windows. The thieves, realizing they had been caught, turned to run, only to find the street lined with cats, hissing and growling. One of them tried to push through, but Fluffy leapt from the roof, landing squarely on the thief's head, clawing and biting with all his might. The man yelped, flailing to shake him off, but Fluffy held on, scratching at his face until he stumbled backward. Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had called the police. Seeing no way out, the thieves took off running, but Ash and the others were already in motion. They darted in and out of their path, tripping them up. By the time the police arrived, the thieves were tangled in trash bins, covered in scratches, and too exhausted to resist. The next morning, the neighborhood was buzzing. The police had arrested the thieves thanks to a mysterious group of vigilante cats. People laughed, calling it the Feline Force or the Midnight Cat Patrol. But Mrs. Leland just smiled knowingly as she scratched Fluffy behind the ears. "You've always been a clever one, haven't you?" she murmured. Fluffy purred, stretching out lazily on her lap. The other cats came by that afternoon, gathering in the alley once more. Ash nodded at Fluffy with respect. You did good, Fluffy. Fluffy blinked slowly, a cat's way of saying, I know. From that night on, Fluffy wasn't just another sleepy house cat. He was Fluffy, the hero of the neighborhood, the leader of a secret feline force that kept watch when the world went to sleep. And though he still loved his naps in the sun, he never stopped listening, never stopped watching, ready to rise again if danger ever returned. After all, heroes come in all shapes and sizes, even the fluffiest ones.